welcome and thank you for tuning in. I'm Jeffrey Pickett. I'm the Stoughton Public Schools Media Relations Manager. And I'm here today with TJ Recupero, who is the chair of the Elementary School Building Project Committee, and with our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Joseph Baeta. And we're here to talk about the new elementary school building project, which the residents of Stoughton will be going to the ballot to vote in a special election on June 11th to determine whether or not the project will, as proposed, will be funded. So we're here just to present some information ahead of that June 11th special election. And let's get right to it. So thank you so much for coming in. We wanted to put this forum together to be able to inform residents before the June 11th election. So we'll start off with just how did we get here and the need for this project. Not all at once.
I'll start with this. So it goes back quite a ways. It goes back to 2010. Town meeting funded and commissioned a town-wide facilities master plan, identifying deficiencies with all the buildings all around town.
And we have a timeline that we could show.
That timeline shows it pretty well. So right around that same time, maybe a couple of years afterwards, the school committee began a process of investigating first and then submitting statements of interest, which is the first step in obtaining grant funding from the Massachusetts School Building Authority. And I think that is around 2012 or so. In 2014, we had submitted SOI statements of interest for both the South School and the high school. MSBA came to Stoughton, toured both schools. At that time, I think it was universally accepted that the high school, although the South School had a greater need, the high school was a better project for the town because it gave us more bang for our buck. There were more students, bigger community impact, so that was the focus at the time. The deficiencies with the South School still continued. In fact, they date prior to when the facilities master plan was created, but that's just the best marking point we can use, because when you submit the SOI with MSBA, and I'll end here because I don't want to go too far into the weeds.
Well, we can look at some of the deficiencies. We have a
sure.
slide
and the
about
whole
that.
process is, if you look at the regulations from MSBA, it doesn't ask you to come forward with a project or a proposal. It asks you to come forward with a solution. That's straight from the regs. So you study all options, including just repairing what you have. And in this case, our solution was a 550 student school that accounts for, Joe can talk about the educational component, that brings us into the foreseeable future for our elementary schools generally. So.
And so this project isn't just simply a replacement of the South Elementary School. It's actually reshaping the way elementary school education will be provided here in Stoughton. So if you could talk a little bit about that, Dr. Baeta.
Sure. Thanks, Jeffrey, and thanks, TJ, for being with us today, too. So I think it's really important for anyone out there in watching this that we recognize that over a 17-year period, the taxpayers of this community built 5 elementary schools, including renovations during that time. And here we are 50-plus years later since the opening of the DAR and then the Gibbons, trying to look at a consolidated effort. The school committee prior to my arrival and since then in this project has really looked about the idea that we cannot continue to go out and build new elementary schools every 5 or 10 years. So this brings us into the 21st century for our first elementary school. If it passes opening 27, so we're 27 years into the new century before getting a new elementary school. And the consolidation effort requires a redistricting. Well, the redistricting is going to happen regardless because of our enrollment numbers and trying to make sure that all students are here in Stoughton with specialized programming and supports. So we're redistricting regardless of the outcome. That's number one. Number two, I think that's important, is the school committee has recognized that if this is successful, there's really only one new building in the future down the road, and that would be the O'Donnell Middle School. But when we really take a look at the deficiencies of the South School, what we're really taking a look at is also what TJ mentioned earlier, which is that there was a decision made at the time that we weren't going to be borrowing millions upon millions of dollars every other year to put into a building that we knew, A, we wouldn't get anything from MSBA for that building in terms of accelerated repair with new windows or roofs or any of that, because in general the building, its life cycle is over. And so by consolidating, what we do is we also open up spaces at other schools for programming, which is a significant need that we have within the district right now, as we are one of the only districts besides the cities in the area that are actually seeing significant increase in enrollment.
So one of the issues that comes up with any building project, of course, is cost. So I'd like to be able to go into that and share how the MSBA funding process works and exactly how much the Stoughton taxpayers would be paying for this project.
So Dr. Baeta can say this first part better than I can, but when you apply to the MSBA program, grant program, you can't just build any school. You have to build a school that complies with their space requirements, their program requirements, and it meets their, they give you a student enrollment, so you're limited by how big you can build it outside of their grant. I mean, you could go bigger, but it's going to cost you more as a local community. So you can't just take any old building, submit it to MSBA, and expect that they'd accept it. You need to meet certain criteria along the way, one of which is, by the way, an educational program that's about 80 pages long. You can read it online. It's a fantastic document. It tells you all about the future of elementary education in this school and beyond. And then you submit that to MSBA, you go through a process, you estimate the price. That estimate is it's fashioned by two independent cost estimators who meet, reconcile their differences, come up with a value, in our case of $114 million. It's actually 113 because 1 million of that was spent in the feasibility study phase, which is where we are right now. MSBA has told us that they will fund about 42% of the total cost of that, which will equate to about 47 million.
And we have a graphic that shows that.
Do we? Fantastic. Leaving about $66.5 million on the town. I think you have to qualify that further, is that about 5% of that is contingency that hopefully we don't ever have to use. It's also, I think, Dr. Baeta will say this too, we're not being frivolous with the spending, and we won't be throughout. That's going to be used wisely, and we maximize the grant with the space allotment in this design. So hopefully it won't cost $66 million.
Yeah, I think, I've noted this a number of times. This is my fifth MSBA project as a superintendent in the last 15 years, and I've done accelerated repair with the roofs and the windows and all that. But I left the district in 2013 with where the end result of the MSBA was, no, you're not building a new junior senior high school. You're actually building the first of its kind K to 12 school in the state, one building. And they did that because they saw the cost estimates for the town to build two new elementary schools, a pre-K to 3 and a 4 to 6. And so the idea that we had put forth at the time is it's not affordable. So we went out for one building for the entire district. So that's one idea of, quote, guaranteed money and going through a process required by MSBA. So, because some folks are suggesting that we didn't look at a reno addition, for example. The fact of the matter is I just came from another district that did a reno addition of a 1972 high school. And so that 1972 building, when it went down to its core 4 walls, it was solid. So MSBA said, your walls are great, your core is great, we're going to do a renovation addition, not a new building. We had to go through that process and did a 5-phase. In this particular case, the building committee, as I was coming in, I had already looked at not only 12 different sites and 4 different models, but literally it said, and MSBA agreed that it has to be a new building in order for them to be part of the game and provide some type of funding source back to the community. And so that's where the 44 million comes into play in terms of the taxpayers, of the part that the taxpayers are, quote, not responsible for. recognizing that all of us pay taxes that go towards the MSBA. The MSBA is funded by the 1 cent on the state tax for purchasing of goods and all of that. So 1 cent goes into that account. So you're utilizing that, and then the MSBA comes out and through a 3-step formula says, well, out of that total, we'll give you this percentage, which right now is coming in at about 42% of the total, which is a significant amount of money in comparison to having to either go out for a debt exclusion that doesn't have any state support, or having to borrow millions upon millions of dollars over probably a 3-year period to fix the building, and no additions. Literally, you're just putting up new walls and all of that stuff. You're not going through an MSBA project process.
What would be the rough estimate for just renovating the South School, which of course is not ADA compliant, and as soon as you start a project of that magnitude, you have to bring it up to code?
Yeah, you hit upon what the architects have been telling us during the process. You took a look at the entrance of the South School and those 2 ramps, of which just last evening we had one of our townspeople who's a parent and concerned about ADA and is wheelchair bound, who can't go up and down those. The second one she won't even attempt because of the angle, and those weren't put there for ADA compliance. Those were put there back in the day for the TV carts and the video carts to go up and down between floors. They were never there for the purposes of ADA compliance, which didn't come into play until I believe it was 76 or so. The building doesn't have any compliance when it comes to that. So we would have to take, for example, that entire front office area would probably require the loss of space in order to be able to provide the appropriate ADA compliance needs of that building on 2 sides, by the way, because the other side is actually only staircases. And then the last part of that I think is important is that MSBA wants to make sure that the taxpayers are paying for a building that has a lifespan of at least 50 years. At least 50 years. And so they won't do it if it doesn't. So they're looking at a design including available space to add on if you need to. Even the high school has that. The projects I've done have had to have available space to be able to do so.
We have a slide here about what would happen if the project is not voted for on June 11th, and just to go over, it's a question we get a lot. What exactly happens if this doesn't pass? So,
well, for starters, we'd be disqualified now from the MSBA grant. So any project would have to go back in the queue to solve Stoughton's problem with the South School. So this part of the question gets asked quite a bit, and Joe touched on it a second ago. We can't just, as much as it sounds like a simple thing, like let's just repair what we have, we really can't. And I think we agree on this, but we're timid in saying it, but there really isn't any possible way to just repair what we have. And I can put that in real math for you. Anyone could go online, they can pull up the assessment for any building in Stoughton, and you'll see that the South School was assessed at $3.9 million. Any repair of any kind that exceeds 30% of that building value, so that's any repair over $1.17 million, triggers a requirement to bring the entire building up to full ADA compliance. And Joe mentioned the hallway, which every time I look down that hallway as you peek in, and if anybody hasn't, I'm sure the principal, Jake Dorr, would love to give you a tour. That hallway, you look down, and the person at the other end is about 20 feet higher than you, with 2 ramps that are at best a 45-degree incline. So anyway, just to do windows, for example, 40% of the windows is costed out at about $1.6 million. Just windows. Interior doors, which if you tear up a hallway like that, you have to redo all the interior doors, $1.3 million just for that. So just to replace the doors inside means you have to bring the entire building up to code, which was estimated at a $35 million cost.
And I think added to that is, without scaring anybody, all enclosed asbestos that would have to be removed from that building as part of the project, from the floors to the ceilings to the walls to windows, are we would have to abate that in some way, shape, or form as part of the cost, which is the way to do it. but I would have children in there, and as the superintendent, I couldn't make a recommendation that I'm going to be tearing down with kids in the building. So I would be looking for what I think is the worst waste of money, which is for the taxpayers to have to fund millions upon millions of dollars in modular classrooms, of which the actual site probably wouldn't be the South School. I'd have to move them somewhere else.
Joe shocked me with this. That if you think, I mean, modular classrooms, sure, we'd need them, but then you think about where you'd actually put them.
Right.
And the South, there's nowhere to put them.
No. No, and you have to create septic or tie into a sewer system. Huge security issues because it's not going to be connected to the building. It's going to be literally out unless you move modulus to the two schools, which would be predominantly either the Dart and the Gibbons or both. So you'd be picking up 315 students and moving them to, for a minimum of a year and a half to 2 years, if not longer, if you got the piece of the pie. It's literally dollars being thrown out the window for a third-party vendor to make millions of dollars off of. And that, to me, doesn't make any sense.
And at the end of the day, you don't end up with a school that's meeting the 21st century needs that were set forth in the education plan.
Doesn't even fit as many students as it fits now, because we would lose some space due to widening hallways and doors. So the architect has said we'd lose space. That building is already over capacity, so that those students would have to go to some other school. I'm not telling you anything that Joe couldn't say 5 times better than I ever could, but it's a bigger problem. We wouldn't even attempt it. It's impossible to attempt to repair that building.
And truly would not provide you, as a taxpayer, the 50 years that you've said you want in a building. I think the other thing too that has come up at a couple of the forums and the not able to afford it and so on and so forth. Listen, as a committee, we know that people have to make individual decisions about what they can or can't afford. What I do think is important is go onto our website for the building or use the code that's...
Yeah, we have a code that we can bring up.
And if you take that code, you can actually go to your taxes that you currently pay for your home valuation assessed by the town, and you put in your number. This is not the number on Realtor.com. This is what you're paying. You put in that number, and it'll give you pretty good estimate of, are you above the $318? Are you significantly below? You might find out that your valuation of your house is $399, and you're only paying, and I shouldn't say only, but you're paying $201, and you say, okay, $201. And remember that these numbers are not going to be finalized until we actually go out and borrow and take the money, which will be established by the select board when the time comes on recommendations from the treasurer and the accountant, the business officer, I should say, director of finance. And most importantly of that, this project also doesn't include what could be potentially 7 figures in rebates because of efficiencies. And I've said this a million times, and I'm happy to share with the public. The Jones School is 1/5 the size of the new high school, and it costs us more to heat the Jones School than it does the new high school. That's the difference of efficiencies today. And so there is a long-term potential savings to operational budgets in this proposal as well, including not having to share as many staff, the opportunity to have a new STEM lab, which will also allow for us to create other STEM labs throughout the district so that students in all elementary schools are having an experience of that. And then lastly, for me, one of the most important parts as a community member who lives in town is the access to the community. I mean, number one, voting day, I don't have to worry about the headaches at the South School, right? Because both the gym and cafeterium have their own separate entrances. And then more importantly, I think, is the opportunity for that side of town to have an area where people can walk, where people can participate. If we're doing pickleball and we're doing the soccer field and basketball, where you can have that be a true community school, which would really be our second community school after the high school.
And with our final 9 minutes or so, I'd like to go over a couple different topics. One, just to go a little bit more into the site plan and what exactly you'd be getting out of this building if passed. And then secondly, what happens afterwards, specifically the Wilkins School, the existing South School, the Jones School. So we'll start with the site plan, which if we could bring up, exactly where, tell us where this is located, and we can go over that a little bit. I'll point out that the architect who's working on this project and the owner's project rep, for that matter, both worked on the high school
That's right.
project. So, the team back together, so so to speak. So this is the site plan that's off of Park Street.
Yeah, so before I came here, so this is off of Park Street, the old Lion Lumber area, as many of us in town recognize it as. The biggest thing here is that the building committee and then school committee prior to my arrival, really, they looked at 12 different sites, and we knew one thing to be factual. We needed to build a school on the south side of town. We couldn't do a consolidated school somewhere else. It had to be on the south side of town. And so this really became the only site that became available. And there is some folks with some pushback because there is, quote, a bridge coming in off of Park and then one onto Haynes Road, which is an emergency exit only. We've already received some feedback about cameras out there and those things. That's all going to be considered because people have some concerns. But that's an emergency exit only. And the reason for that, to be quite honest, is when I came on board, I pushed and said, you need to have an emergency exit in today's world of a lot of the training for schools that you go through. So it'd only be utilized for that purpose. It's not a road that has a lot of families per se, where you're going to have to worry about dirt bikes and all of that stuff. I mean, I've been going down there to take a look at some of that and looking at who the residents are in that area. So I think it'll stay pretty peaceful in general, but I understand the concern. The other thing, too, is that we are leaving behind another approximately 8 acres of a buildable lot that could be utilized for anything that school committee, select board, and the policymakers of the town decide to do with it, which I think is a good thing, including just leaving it as open space that can be used educationally. The second part of that I think is really important is that we try to design this school around all children. Right, we made sure that the building committee made sure that it had a larger gym than anticipated for what we typically see at an elementary school. A cafeterium that's a good size for the number of lunches it's going to have. A RISE classroom, music program, learning commons with the old libraries. And then we staggered everything with a K1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 4th and 5th grade is on the 3rd floor, middle is 2, 3, and then K1 is on the 1st floor, and
That
that's
would
just
be the
because
blue.
of age.
That's
That
the
would-
blue in
yeah,
the image that you're looking
exactly.
at. The yellow is the gymnasium and the cafeteria
Exactly.
space.
And the way it flows is, in today's world, anything to do with special populations, they have to be mainstreamed. In the old days, I hate to say it this way, but it wasn't unusual to see a special education or even an EL classroom like I had by the boiler room, where it was just a makeshift classroom. I can attest to that because it happened to me. And in today's world of rules and regulations, appropriately so, we want to make sure that our children in specialized classrooms have all access, and that all children are seeing each other for who they are, which is young learners learning to learn from each other, engage with each other, and see that they are different from each other in so many different ways, and hopefully have and see the benefits of that. The other thing I think that's important to your second part of the question, if I may real quickly, is a decision has been made that the consolidation plan means that the Wilkins Elementary School more than likely is going to become the new preschool, especially with early intervention needs. We have over 143 students right now at the Jones. And so universal pre-K is coming.
And we have a graphic
And that's
that
an
shows this.
opportunity. That's an opportunity for us. And that also then allows part 3 of that, which is no more building of new elementary schools. Literally, the future would be a renovation addition type of projects, which are significantly less. We've already done some of that with windows and roofs and boilers in 2 of the 3 elementary schools that would be left. We would continue to look at those projects so that we're never looking at a $60 million project again, of course, dependent on the cost of living and everything else. And I think the other part is that we're also looking at alternative education, replacing the current Jones School preschool, as a way to provide support services for students in 6 to 12 who are struggling with school and need a smaller environment in order to be successful. And so we're doing all of those things, and you'll be seeing a preventative maintenance plan that'll be coming out probably by the springtime of next year, which will speak about how we're spending our operating budget on making sure that we are working long-term, short-term, long-term on preventative maintenance for our schools, so that in the future, except for the O'Donnell Middle School, which right now we're going to be spending some money on if town meeting approves the vestibules in the next town meeting, is the beginning of doing some fixing there to extend the life of that school until its turn to come up for a potential MSBA project. So there's a lot of things that are working at the same time in order to move this in the right direction for the town of Stoughton. The future, as TJ has said a million times, the future right now through MSBA is larger schools. It is what it is, like it or not, agree with it or not. The days of building small schools for 250, 275 kids is coming to an end. The bang for the buck just isn't there to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, never mind the local taxpayer.
Yeah, can I add to that too? Think about it in these terms. MSBA is a true partner with the town when they invest $47 million in our project. If we go back to them with a project to just do the South School, we've already identified the other schools in town and their deficiencies through the facilities master plan. They know about the Wilkins School, and they see that down the road as an expense, not just to us, but to them. If you're MSBA and you want to spend your dollars efficiently, they're sitting on billions of dollars. They do a handful of projects,
Right.
probably only 3 or 4 K-5 schools per year. They need to choose them wisely. They can't do 2 from Stoughton in a short window of time. I know the clock is running down. So the average school that MSBA does these days is 630 students. Ours is built for 550. We're still smaller than they would like, or smaller than the average, I should say. But
And I think one of the things that I get some comments on all the time is if we don't do this now, then when? That's number one. Number two, I want everybody to think about what we paid for the high school, and people are like, oh my goodness, this is like the cost. Yeah. So what do we think we would be paying for a high school today if this was the project we had before us? It'd be at least somewhere between 35% and 40% higher, at least.
At least.
Okay, and so. Yes, there's a lot coming at the taxpayers at the same time from the fire station, for example, from the high school. The library, which has been mentioned a number of times, I want to correct for the record, is not a debt exclusion. That was borrowing and a grant. Right. So this is the third major project, if you will. It's a lot at the same time, and I guess I'll finish here by simply saying, as a resident, that's concerning to me, right, that we've spent so long as a community not being efficient in building our public buildings as a community, and literally put it on a 20-year period of building all of this stuff.
So I want to thank both TJ Recupero and Superintendent Joe Baeta for coming on today. And if we could just bring up the screen that has our contact information. If you watching this program and have some questions, you could email us at newelementaryschool@stoughtonschools.org. We answer those questions very quickly, and we have a Facebook page that you can visit and a website as well. If you go to the main Stoughton Public Schools webpage, you'll see the project page, and I will answer many more questions, lots of project documents for you to look at. It's all there for you to take in ahead of the debt exclusion vote on June 11th, 2024. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I really want to thank the crew at SMAC for accommodating us and welcoming us to the studio. And take care, and thank you for tuning in.